Hello everyone. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're diving into an emotional journey where Tu Tien slowly recovers, hidden truths begin to surface, and a quiet garden becomes the place where healing truly starts. When danger fades but secrets remain, can love really bring peace back into their lives? If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next episodes. Tu Tien makes it home just before dawn, and the first thing she sees is the porch light still on. It's not bright, it's not dramatic, it's just steady, like someone refused to let the night win. The gate creaks when she pushes it open, and her knees almost give out. Her hair is tangled, her clothes smell like damp leaves, and her whole body feels like it's been holding its breath for days. Then she hears footsteps, fast, uneven, coming from inside. Tu Tien! Jack's voice cracks on her name, like he's afraid it's not real. He appears in the doorway barefoot, wearing yesterday's clothes, eyes red, face pale. For half a second, he just stares at her like his brain can't accept what his eyes are seeing, and then he moves. He crosses the yard in 3 strides, wraps his arms around her, and holds her so tight she can barely breathe. "You're here!" he whispers into her hair. "You're here! You're here!" Tu Tien tries to speak, but the sound comes out as a shaky breath. Her hands clutch the back of his shirt, like she might fall through the ground if she lets go. Jack pulls back just enough to look at her face. His jaw tightens when he sees the bruises and the dirt on her skin. "Don't talk," he says quickly. "Just come inside, please." Inside the house, the air is warm and quiet. Anna is asleep in the small crib near the bed, her tiny chest rising and falling. A soft blanket is tucked around her, and one little hand is resting on the stuffed toy she refuses to sleep without. Tu Tien's eyes fill when she sees her daughter. She takes one step forward, but the room tilts slightly, and Jack catches her immediately. "Hey," he says gently. "Slow, you're safe now." He helps her sit on the edge of the bed, then kneels in front of her like he's checking a precious object for cracks. "Any pain?" he asks. "Head, chest, arms?" Tu Tien nods faintly. "I'm just exhausted." Jack stands fast. "I'm making porridge. You need something warm." Tu Tien tries to protest, but Jack is already in the kitchen, moving like someone who's been surviving on adrenaline and fear. The pot clinks, water pours. The stove clicks on. Tu Tien sits there, listening to the normal sounds of home, sounds she thought she might never hear again. And the tightness in her chest finally loosens just a little. When Jack brings the bowl back, the porridge is plain. Rice, a little ginger, a pinch of salt. It smells like comfort. He sits beside her, holding the spoon like he's afraid she'll disappear if he looks away. "Just a few bites," he says. "For me?" Tu Tien manages a small smile. "You always say that." "Because it works," he says, and his voice almost breaks again. She takes a bite. It's hot, soft and simple, and for the first time in days, her body believes it might be allowed to rest. Jack watches her swallow like it's the most important thing in the world. Between spoonfuls, he checks her hands, her wrists, her forehead. His touch is careful, but his fear is obvious. "I should have protected you," he says, quietly. Tu Tien shakes her head. "You did. You never stopped trying." Jack stares at the floor for a moment, breathing hard through his nose like he's trying not to fall apart. Then he stands and reaches for his car keys. "I'm taking you to Mom's," he says. "You need people around you. I need her to see you with her own eyes." Tu Tien hesitates. "Jack, I'm fine." "You're not," he says, gently but firmly. "And I'm done pretending you have to be strong alone." He glances toward Anna's crib, then lowers his voice. "We'll take Anna too. She stays with you." A little later, Jack carries Anna out carefully, still half asleep, cheeks warm, hair tied into 2 tiny braids that stick up at odd angles. She blinks at the cold morning air, then immediately reaches for her mother. "Mama," she murmurs, voice thick with sleep. Tu Tien presses her lips to Anna's forehead, and something in her expression shifts, like her heart finally remembers what it's fighting for. Jack helps Tu Tien into the passenger seat of the car, then buckles Anna into the back seat. He checks the seatbelt twice, then a third time, because his hands don't know how to stop being nervous. The drive to Mother Loy's house is quiet. The road is still damp, the sky barely waking up. Jack keeps both hands on the wheel, eyes scanning the road like danger might leap out from behind a tree. Tu Tien watches his profile and feels a sting of guilt. He looks like someone who hasn't slept in a week. When they arrive, Mother Loy opens the door before they even knock, like she's been waiting with her ear pressed against the world. The moment she sees Tu Tien, she freezes. Then her face collapses into pure emotion. "Oh, my child!" Mother Loy rushes forward and pulls Tu Tien into her arms. For a second, it's not a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. It's just 2 women holding on, like the past few days nearly stole something permanent. Tu Tien tries to be brave, but the moment she feels that embrace, she breaks. She cries quietly at first, then harder, shoulders shaking. Mother Loy strokes her hair over and over. "You're home. You're safe. Thank God." Jack stands a few steps behind them, watching with red eyes. He looks relieved, but the relief is mixed with something heavier, like he's still afraid this could vanish. Chudong steps out from the kitchen, his face tight with worry. He nods at Jack, then gently reaches for Anna. "Come here, little one," he says softly. Anna clings to Tu Tien for a second, then lets Chudong pick her up. She stares at everyone's faces like she can sense the seriousness, then rests her head against his shoulder. Inside, Mother Loy makes tea with shaking hands. She keeps glancing at Tu Tien as if checking that she's still sitting there. Jack finally speaks, voice low. "We need to report everything." Mother Loy's expression shifts, worry turning into anger. "Yes," she says. "They can't just disappear after what they did." Tu Tien wipes her cheeks, takes a breath, and nods. "I'll tell the police everything." Jack squeezes her hand. "I'll be right next to you." Mother Loy hesitates for half a second, then forces a calm smile and touches Jack's shoulder. "Go, do it properly. I'll keep Anna here for you." Jack looks at her, grateful. "Thank you, Mum." Tu Tien stands slowly, still unsteady, and Mother Loy immediately steps forward to support her. "You don't have to be strong here," Mother Loy whispers. Tu Tien swallows hard. "I just want this to end." A short time later, Jack drives Tu Tien to the police station. The morning has fully arrived now, but it still feels like the world is holding its breath. At the front desk, Jack speaks first, clear and controlled, introducing the case and asking to file the full report. Then Tu Tien tells her story. Her voice trembles at times, but she doesn't leave anything out. The necklace being grabbed, the shove, the fall, the fear, the way they tried to hide what they'd done by pushing her into the deep forest. Jack sits beside her, fists clenched so tight his knuckles go white, But he doesn't interrupt. He lets her speak. He lets her reclaim her voice. The officer taking notes looks serious, asking careful questions, confirming names and details. When Tu Tien finishes, the officer nods. "We will file this as a serious assault and abduction attempt," he says. "We'll issue a search order immediately." Jack leans forward. "And if they've already left the area?" "We'll coordinate," the officer replies. "But it may take time." Time. Jack hears that word like a threat. He takes Tu Tien's hand again. "We'll wait, but we won't be quiet." Back home later, the sun is higher, and the yard looks almost normal. Green leaves, damp soil, birds hopping along the fence. It's strange how the world keeps moving after something horrible happens. Tu Tien sits on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching Jack work in the garden. He's not building anything big today. He's not talking about contracts or meetings. He's pulling weeds, straightening small borders, adjusting a bamboo stake. Simple tasks like he's rebuilding peace, one small movement at a time. Every few minutes he looks back at her, not checking the garden, checking her. Tu Tien finally speaks, voice soft. "You don't have to do this right now." Jack wipes sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. "Yes, I do." He points to a corner where a small patch of flowers is starting to take shape. "You told me once you wanted a garden that felt like hope. So we're going to make it. Slowly. Together." Tu Tien's eyes sting again, but this time the tears feel different. Not fear, not pain, something closer to gratitude. Jack walks over, kneels beside her, and takes her hand gently. "We'll laugh again," he says. "Not because we forgot, but because we survived." Tu Tien nods, squeezing his fingers back. In the house, somewhere down the hall, Anna's small voice drifts out as she babbles to herself, safe with Mother Loy nearby. And for the first time since the nightmare began, Tu Tien lets herself believe that maybe the dark days are behind them, even if the road ahead still has storms waiting. That afternoon, the sky stays soft and pale, like it's trying not to overwhelm anyone. Tu Tien dozes lightly on the porch, wrapped in a thin blanket. Her sleep is shallow, broken by memories, but every time her body tenses, she hears a familiar sound, the scrape of Jack's shovel in the dirt, the steady rhythm of his movements, and it pulls her back. She wakes to the smell of warm rice and vegetables drifting from the kitchen. Jack has changed out of his work clothes and is moving quietly inside, careful not to make sudden noises. When he notices her eyes open, he pauses. "Did I wake you?" he asks. Tu Tien shakes her head. "No, I slept. A little." He smiles, relieved. "That's enough for today." He brings out a simple meal, steamed rice, soup, a plate of greens. Nothing fancy, nothing heavy, just food meant to help someone heal. They eat slowly, mostly in silence. It's not an awkward silence, just one filled with shared understanding. Some things don't need to be said out loud yet. After eating, Tu Tien finally asks the question that's been sitting in her chest all day. "Did you talk to the police again?" Jack nods. "They confirmed it this morning. Mrs. Tuttien, the debt collector, left the area last night. They're officially wanted, but..." He exhales. "They're gone for now." Tu Tien looks down at her hands. "So they're free." "For the moment," Jack says carefully. "But they can't just erase what they did, not anymore." She nods, though her shoulders tense slightly. Jack notices immediately. He reaches across the table and places his hand over hers. "Hey," he says softly. They don't get to control your life anymore. I won't let that happen. Tu Tien meets his eyes. I'm not scared of them, she says. I'm scared of being weak. Jack shakes his head. Surviving what you did isn't weakness, it's proof. Later in the afternoon, Mother Ly brings Anna back home. The little girl runs straight toward Tu Tien, her small feet slapping against the ground, arms stretched wide. Mama! Tu Tien bends down carefully, hugging Anna close. Anna presses her cheek against her mother's chest, humming softly like she's trying to calm both of them at once. Mother Ly watches the scene with misty eyes. She forces a smile, but something about her expression feels slightly guarded. Jack doesn't notice. Tu Tien does, but she's too tired to question it. That evening, after Anna falls asleep, Jack sits with Tu Tien in the living room. A single light is on, casting long shadows on the wall. The house feels quiet in a fragile way, like it could shatter if someone speaks too loudly. Jack clears his throat. Tomorrow I want to take you out for a bit. Tu Tien frowns. Out where? Just the fields behind the house, the place we talked about before. No people. No noise. She considers it, then nods. Okay. He hesitates, then adds, only if you feel up to it. I do, she says honestly. I don't want to hide anymore. That night, Tu Tien dreams, but for the first time in days, it's not the forest. She dreams of sunlight. The next morning is crisp and clear. Jack helps Tu Tien put on a light jacket, then carefully walks with her down the path behind the house. The fields stretch out quietly, dew still clinging to the grass. Birds flutter up as they approach, startled but not afraid. Jack carries a small basket with water and fruit. He sets it down under a tree and sits beside Tu Tien. For a while, they just watch the wind move through the grass. This place, Tu Tien says softly, it feels empty, but peaceful. Jack nods. That's why I like it. She glances at him. You didn't sleep much, did you? He gives a small, guilty smile. Not really. You don't have to be strong all the time, she says gently. Jack looks at the ground. I know, if I stop, I'm afraid everything will fall apart. Tu Tien reaches for his hand. It won't? Not if we hold it together? They sit there for a long time, letting the quiet settle into something comforting instead of heavy. Over the next few days, life moves slowly but forward. Jack spends his mornings in the garden, not expanding it, just nurturing what's already there. Tu Tien helps when she can, sitting nearby, sometimes touching the soil, sometimes just watching. They talk more about small things, about hopes they never had time to say out loud before. One afternoon, Tu Tien suddenly says, I want to plant something. Jack looks surprised. Now? She nods. Something that grows slowly. He brings her a small packet of seeds. Together they press them into the earth. No rushing, Jack says. Tu Tien smiles faintly. That sounds perfect. At Mother Ly's house, however, the atmosphere is different. She sits alone at the table one evening, staring at a worn document in her hands. Her fingers tighten around it, the land ownership certificate. She folds it carefully, hides it deep in a drawer, and exhales shakily. 1 more month, she whispers to herself. Just 1 month. She convinces herself it's worth it. Back at Jack's house, laughter finally returns. Quiet at first, then more real. One evening, Anna trips while chasing a butterfly and lands softly on the grass. She looks up, startled, then starts giggling instead of crying. Tu Tien laughs out loud before she can stop herself. The sound surprises her. Jack freezes, then turns to look at her, eyes wide. "You laughed," he says softly. She presses a hand to her mouth, realizing it's true. "I did." Jack smiles fully for the first time in a long while. That night, as they sit together after putting Anna to bed, Tu Tien rests her head on Jack's shoulder. "I don't feel broken anymore," she says. Jack closes his eyes. "You never were." The road ahead is still uncertain. The people who hurt her are still out there somewhere. Mother Loy's secret still ticks like a quiet clock in the background, but for now, the house is warm, the garden is growing, and the laughter, fragile, precious laughter, is slowly finding its way back into their lives. Not because the pain is gone, but because love stayed. After escaping a terrifying ordeal and making it safely home, Tu Tien is gently cared for by Jack, who cooks for her and stays by her side as she slowly regains her strength. He later takes her to visit Mother Loy, where emotions overflow and the two women embrace, crying together in relief. Unknown to Jack, Mother Loy is hiding a risky decision she made to help secure his future. Wanting justice, Jack brings Tu Tien to the police station to report her disappearance and reveal the truth about Mrs. Toy and the debt collector, who assaulted her and abandoned her in the forest to destroy evidence. Although arrest warrants are issued, the suspects have already fled. In the days that follow, Jack and Tu Tien focus on rebuilding peace, working together on their dream garden, finding comfort, laughter, and renewed hope after the darkest days.